The Puck Portfolio with Andy MacNeil.
Hey, welcome to the Puck Portfolio. My name is Andy MacNeil. I'm here on weekdays to provide NHL projections, picks, betting advice, and strategies to help you make informed bets throughout the NHL season, which is, of course, coming to a close. We've got 2 weeks left of regular season hockey. The NHL playoffs will be getting started before you know it, and we'll have a lot of playoff hockey talk right here on the Canada Sports Betting YouTube channel. So subscribe now and drop a like on this video if you don't mind. It helps out a ton. Of course, we broke down Wednesday's NHL games on Tuesday's show. We looked ahead, locked in a couple of bets. But before we talk about that, let's get into a bit of a schedule breakdown for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. What the hell? We've got a lot of hockey action over the next few days. Of course, we've got some teams, the Devils, the Vancouver Canucks playing the second half of a back-to-back. That'll be the case again on Thursday and Friday. The rest column tells you how many days rest teams have had across the league heading into their games, and the load column gives you a little bit more context, tells you whether a team has played 2 games in 2 nights or, maybe 3 games in 4 nights, etc. Not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. I factor it into my handicapping, so we'll talk about it as we get into some of the games, but you can take a screenshot and have a look at it a little bit later. Of course, Jeff Fayette breaks down the NHL schedule on a weekly basis, so you can check out rest mismatches throughout the NHL, the week of NHL hockey at canadasportsbetting.ca each and every week. That gets released on Sunday, so it's a few days old, but you can look ahead to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, etc., and get a handle on who's got the toughest schedule this week in the NHL. But to the bets that I did lock in on Wednesday, of course, a losing bet on the Capitals. They jumped out to an early lead, but ended up losing 6-2 to the Buffalo Sabres. Their playoff chances have dropped down to around 55%. The Philadelphia Flyers sitting at 54%. The New York Islanders picked up a 2-1 win over the Chicago Blackhawks, so their playoff chances have risen up to about 32%. The Pittsburgh Penguins picked up an upset win over the New Jersey Devils. Brought their playoff chances to up around 9%. Pretty much put a fork in the Devils' playoff chances, now sitting at around 0.5%. The Buffalo Sabres pretty much out of the mix too, down around 0.3% chance to make the playoffs according to the Canada Sports Betting projection model. But yesterday I locked in a bet on the Toronto Maple Leafs at minus 115 odds. Those were the opening odds at North Star Bets. And those odds did not stick around long because sportsbooks like DraftKings listed Toronto as a favorite in the minus 140 range. Now the Maple Leafs are priced around minus 125 or minus 130 at the majority of sportsbooks. And that matches up pretty close with my projection for the game. Minus 130, I think, is a fair estimate when you consider how this market was able to be bet into shape. I mean, some sports books opened up really short on the Maple Leafs, minus 115. Other sports books opened up longer on the Lightning, and now they're meeting in the middle. And I think that is a pretty good way to tell that this one is basically priced where it should be. Now, Morgan Riley is expected to return to the Maple Leafs lineup. We had anticipated that, so that is good news. And Joseph Woll is expected to get the start, while Andre Vasilevsky will be getting the start for the Lightning. So aside from that, looking to win 1 unit on the Maple Leafs at minus 115. That's from Tuesday. We also locked in a bet on the Arizona Coyotes at plus 135, half unit play. They are down around the plus 120 range now. Looks like it's going to be Arthur Silvos versus Connor Ingram, which is what we were hoping for. So some good line value there on the Coyotes. The Canucks, of course, lost 6-3 to the Vegas Golden Knights on Tuesday. So the second half of a back-to-back for Vancouver, with their third string goaltender likely getting the nod. Not a great spot. The Coyotes have been a decent home team this season, and they've put up some pretty good offensive showings as of late, even in losing efforts. They doubled up on the Predators recently, 8-4. They were in a wild one versus the Rangers, 8-5. So maybe expect some fireworks tonight at Mullet Arena when the Canucks come to town. The other game that I want to talk about, though, is the Edmonton Oilers. They're in action against the Dallas Stars. Of course, Dallas has had 3 days off compared to 1 day off for the Oilers. Home teams have won 53.8% of the games year to date, but the good guys have won almost 59% of the time in situations like this one, where the road team is at a rest disadvantage. So, based on that information and the odds, it's pretty clear that the betting market rates Edmonton higher than Dallas. But moreover, the Stars have had trouble securing victories on home ice this season. They are tied for the fewest regulation wins at home of any team in the playoff picture. Toronto also has 13 home regulation wins. Dallas does have a .611 win percentage on home ice, but their average odds are closer to 64%, so they have not been a profitable bet on home ice. In fact, if a bettor had placed a $100 bet on Dallas to win every home game this season, they'd be down a cool $275. But the Stars are hot. They've won 11 out of 13 games in March. So they're coming into this month red hot. They rank first in expected goals, all situations since the start of 2024, dating back to January 1st. And they've won 10 of their last 15 home games, too. So things look to be turning around for Dallas. Edmonton's average road odds are around 61%. So this isn't an average game for the Oilers. They have only been a road underdog 6 times this season. But the Oilers have underperformed away from home this season. They've got a 5.41 win percentage. They've outscored teams 4.08 to 2.64 per game at home this season, but their scoring rates for 3.18 and against 3.08 per game are much worse away from home. So they're barely breaking even with a 0.08 goal differential per game on the road, as opposed to roughly 1.5 goal differential on home ice. And they're not the only team that you can see that with. The Colorado Avalanche or another team that has some pretty stark home road splits. Jake Ottinger, he's also been pretty good over his last handful of starts for the Dallas Stars. He's had some struggles this season, but he's been turning it around. Over his last 5 games, he's saved the team 4.3 goals above expected. He's going to start for the Stars on Wednesday. He's 8-2 straight up in his last 10 games. So yeah, I think Dallas should be a favorite. I do have Edmonton rated higher, and that's why they're not a bigger favorite. Otherwise, they would be. But I think the only way that you can bet on the Oilers here at what plus 105 odds, I think is what we're seeing at most sports books right now. They've even got up as high as plus 108 at some sports books. But yeah, plus 105 seems to be the consensus price. I don't see a lot of reason to back the Oilers here. They've been underperforming as the road team this season. And unless you think they are, far superior to the Dallas Stars, I think that's the only way you could see any value, considering how many advantages the Stars have, not just home ice advantage, but they've also got a rest advantage, and rest is a weapon in the NHL. But let's move on to Thursday, April 4th. The game that I really want to talk about is Tampa Bay at Montreal. Of course, the Lightning will play back-to-back games. They're in Toronto on Wednesday, Montreal on Thursday. Andrei Vasilevsky is expected to get the start versus the Maple Leafs. And normally this would mean backup Jonas Johansson would start against the Canadiens, but he hasn't dressed the last 2 games. And that means that we might see Matt Tompkins. And Tompkins, recently called up from the AHL, was called up because of this lower body injury that Johansson is dealing with. Johansson was not at practice on Wednesday, so another sign that he might be sitting out yet another game on Thursday. Tompkins went 1-2 in 3 games earlier this season, posting an .890 save percentage, allowed approximately 1.3 goals above expected. He's gone 15-14 straight up in the AHL this season. I think the Montreal Canadiens are a good bet, even if Jonas Johansson is back from injury, because that at that point, I think the model thinks that Montreal should be priced at plus 127. They would be an even shorter underdog if it is Matt Tompkins in goal for the Lightning. But let's project Jonas Johansson as the starter. We can still justify a 0.75 unit bet on the Montreal Canadiens to win just over a unit, 1.05 units to be exact, at plus 140 or better. So that's my favorite bet for Thursday as things stand now. Looking at the projections, not really any other value on the board for Thursday's 9 games. Just Montreal at plus 140, but you can find plus 145 out there as well. So shop around as always. But yeah, the Canadiens on the money line plus 140 or better. That's a 0.75 unit play. I would make a 1 unit play if I knew it was going to be Matt Tompkins, but there still is a little bit of uncertainty there. Speaking of Montreal, they caught a break when it was announced that Matthew Tkachuk and Carter Verhaeghe would sit out Tuesday's games due to an illness, and they made good on it, beating the Panthers 5-3. But regardless, still an impressive performance nonetheless. What did you take away from Tuesday's game versus the Panthers, Jake?
A lot of similar things to what you're kind of projecting with the Lightning. They caught the Panthers in their second game in 2 nights, straight after a loss in Toronto. Panthers were kind of chasing the game for a lot of the game, got into a lot of penalty trouble. The Canadians took advantage of them, pretty early, got out ahead in the first period, and kind of rolled from there. But I think it's been the story, for the Habs for most of this season is they're getting pretty terrific goaltending pretty consistently. Whether it's Montembeault or Primo, kind of expecting Primo to get the start against the Lightning, and of course he's coming off nearly having 3 shutouts in a row at home at the Bell Center, so he's playing pretty amazing at the Bell Center. So that also bodes well for their chances against Tampa.
Yeah, for sure. So now Ottawa will get their chance to face off against the Panthers. They're hosting Florida on Thursday. And per evolving hockey, the Panthers ranked 21st in expected goals percentage at 5-on-5, 18th in 5-on-5 goals per 60 minutes over the last month. Of course, not having 2 stars like Verhaeghe and Kachuk in the lineup did not help their chances against the Canadiens. I would suspect that both of those players will be back in the lineup on Thursday. They were dealing with an illness, but who knows? The Panthers not playing very well right now. They are 2-8 straight up in their last 10 games. They've, sort of surrendered the Atlantic Division to the Boston Bruins, who now have a 4-point lead over the Panthers. And according to the CSB projection model, Boston has an 80% chance of winning the Atlantic Division now. So that means that first round matchup between the Florida Panthers and the Toronto Maple Leafs is becoming more and more probable by the day. So the Panthers, they've got a 59% chance of finishing second in the Atlantic Division, while the Maple Leafs have a 65% chance of finishing third. So looking pretty likely that we're going to see a matchup between the Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers on or in the first round. And there is a small chance that Toronto could actually switch spots with Florida. They've got a 3-point lead on the Maple Leafs right now, but the Maple Leafs have 2 games in hand. And it doesn't look like Toronto will be, relinquishing their spot to Tampa Bay, who they have a 6-point lead on. But yeah, if the Panthers continue to struggle and the Maple Leafs can perform well down the stretch, it's possible. The model says there is a 24% chance that the Panthers will finish in third place and a 24% chance that Toronto will finish in second place. So not probable, but it is possible. And I think, although, maybe year to date, Florida has been a better team than Boston when you consider their underlying metrics, etc. But hey, the current form matters, and the matchup also matters too. Toronto has not been able to beat Boston this season. They have had some success against the Florida Panthers. They could look back at last year's second round matchup and kind of tell themselves that, hey, the only reason we lost, or the only reason we lost as badly as we did, was because Sergei Bobrovsky stood on his head. Playoff Bob was virtually unbeatable in the second round versus Toronto, and it'd be pretty unlikely to see him repeat that type of performance. So I think there's probably some more confidence within the Leafs organization that this team can take down the Florida Panthers in a first round matchup, compared to the level of confidence that they have that they can take down the Boston Bruins. But hey, if you're a Toronto fan, I think either way, you want to beat both of these teams after what they've done to you in the past. So it probably doesn't matter to the fans one way or the other. Speaking of Boston, they have only been a road dog 10 times this season. They have never closed longer than plus 127 on the money line. So they are a bigger underdog than they've been all season, heading into Thursday's game versus the Carolina Hurricanes. Carolina opened up at minus 164 at North Star Bets and a few other sports books. But since then, some other sports books like FanDuel and DraftKings have opened up with a much more reasonable price of minus 148 and minus 146, respectively. That matches up a lot closer to what I have for this game, minus 139 in favor of the Carolina Hurricanes. I don't think there's a good bet on either side here. I just want to talk about the Bruins and how they have gone 6-4 as road underdogs this season. That's a profit of 2.8 units. If you had bet a one, or if you had made a 1 unit play on the Bruins in all 10 of those games. So while they might not be a good bet, I don't necessarily think it's a good idea to bet against Boston because they have never been priced as this big of an underdog all season long. And, they've been playing decent lately. They've got a 52.5% expected goal share at 5-on-5 over the last month. That's pretty respectable. Nowhere near Carolina's level, but hey, they have been able to upset some good teams here. They've got wins over Edmonton, um, Dallas, Toronto, of course. So why can't they beat the Hurricanes? I think they probably can sometimes, but about I don't know, 41.8% of the time. Plus 139. That's where I think the Boston Bruins should be priced. Yeah, elsewhere, not a whole lot of interest. Some matchups like the St. Louis Blues and the Nashville Predators, they'll get a whole lot more press than they deserve because Nashville has a 98% chance of making the Stanley Cup playoffs, while the Blues' chances are down around 3%. So not much can change there. Same goes for the Colorado Avalanche and the Minnesota Wild. Minnesota's playoff chances are down around 1%. But as I did mention, one of the reasons why the Colorado Avalanche are not a bigger favorite, of course, they've got a back-to-back coming up. They're playing Minnesota on Thursday and the Oilers on Friday, both games on the road. But one of the reasons that the Avs are not a bigger favorite than they are is that their home and road splits are pretty significant. So just pulling things up here on a per game basis, the Colorado Avalanche have a 1.73 goal differential on home ice, minus 0.24 goal differential away from home. Though the Oilers, a similar drop off, they've got a 1.44 goal differential per game on home ice, away from home 0.08, so barely breaking even. So something to watch there for these two Western Conference juggernauts as they perform a lot differently at home than they do on the road. And that's a reason why I would not necessarily be reaching on a team like Colorado against a team like Minnesota, who has been a bit of a scrappy dog as of late. But you know, that pretty much does it for today's episode of the Puck Portfolio. Of course, two bets locked in on Tuesday for Wednesday's games. We got the Maple Leafs minus 115 to win 1 unit, and a half unit bet on the Arizona Coyotes at plus 135. Looking ahead to Thursday, I've got a 0.75 unit bet locked in on the Montreal Canadiens at plus 140 or better. As I mentioned, shop around. There are some better prices out there available on Montreal. Hoping it'll be Matt Tompkins in goal for the Lightning. But if it's not, it won't be the end of the world. The Canadiens, they've shown that they've got what it takes to take down some of these good teams. But until next time, good luck with your bets and gamble responsibly.